Welcome back. I'm hoping this is the very last video that I have for factoring, and this might be a little bit long because I noticed there are quite a few problems left on the review packet. I've saved all my 3 terms for last, and I'm going to kind of go out of order again. I hope this kind of makes sense to you as you follow along. I'm going to do what I consider the easiest problems first, and as I'm looking at my factor flowchart, I'm going to find the ones where my lead term of my trinomial is 1, meaning 1x squared. I'm going to do all of those problems first. So as I'm looking at my problems, 3x squared, nope, that's not 1. 7x squared, nope, not 1. 16, nope, not 1. I found one that starts with 1x squared. I'm going to start with number 19. Now, as I start with number 19, what I'm going to do is factor by my a equals 1. So when you have the lead term of 1, all you need to do is find 2 numbers that multiply to make the last term c, the number, the constant, and those same 2 numbers add to make the middle number b. And you're going to split up your factors. So you're going to have an x times an x to get that 1x squared in the front, and those numbers that you find that factor to multiply to be c and add to make b, fill in your factors here. So as I'm looking here, I need 2 numbers that multiply to make -6 and add to make -5. So I'm going to let you think about that for a second. Multiply to make -6, add to make -5. The combination is going to be a -6 and a +1. I'm going to come to number 20 here, and the reason is because I noticed that there is a GCF. I notice my lead number is 2, and even though that's not 1, I notice that my other numbers are even. So by dividing out that GCF of 2 and they all have an x in common, this problem will end up being a 1x squared problem after I take my GCF out. So if I take that 2x out, the polynomial that I'll have left is going to be a 1x squared minus 10x plus 25. This is why I'm doing this problem first, because it is going to end up being a 1x squared, because all of my factors here, my 2, my 20, my 50 are even, so I can pull that 2 out. I'm going to have 1x squared. Now tell me, just like this problem, tell me 2 numbers that multiply to make +25 and add to make -10. I'm going to let you think about that for a second while I copy down my GCF here. What 2 numbers multiply to make 25 and add to make -10? The combination is going to be 2 -5s. You can leave your answer like this. I will count that for full credit, but if you want to take another step, you could do 2x and then combine these together to make it x minus 5, the quantity squared. Either of those I'll accept for full credit. Now I'm going to keep going and look for a 1x squared. I notice there's a 1x squared here for 24, so I'm going to start with this one. When you have 1x squared, you'd find 2 numbers that multiply to make the last term and add to make the middle term. So in this case, what 2 numbers will multiply to make -54, add to make +15? You might need to guess and check with your calculator a little bit to find some factors, but what's going to end up working out is a +18 and a -3, and that's your answer for 24. I'm going to scroll down and see if I have any more left. Number 32 has 1x squared. Tell me 2 numbers that multiply to make 72 and add to make -27. Multiply to make 72, add to make -27. To multiply to make a positive and add to make a negative, both of these are going to need to be negative, and the 2 numbers that you're going to use are a 3 and a 24. And I don't know if I've made this as clear, but if you put the 24 here and the 3 here, that's the same answer. You have the same factors, so you did it correct. Now, I don't have very many left, but the ones that I do have left have a number out front, and this number is not going to end up dividing out. Now, 21 is really weird. I might do that one last, but these ones that are left, the number that you have out front isn't going to divide out. So I'm going to show you how we solve this problem in class. And I use what's called split the middle method, but some of you might like to do borrow payback. You could do a YouTube video on that, or even, let's see, I'm trying to think of what else. There's like a snowflake method out there, but anyway, use the method that works best for you. So this is how I taught this problem. So as you're looking at your 3x squared plus 11x minus 20, I talked about making a big X off to the side of your paper and turning this into a grouping problem. So I'm going to take my a times my c, and that's going to go in the top of my big X, so negative 60. At the bottom of your big X, you're going to use the number 11. And what you're going to do is find two numbers that multiply to make the negative 60 and add to make 11. And I'm going to end up splitting my middle into those two numbers. Multiply to make 60, add to make 11. I'm going to go with a positive 15 and negative 4. So instead of 11x, I'm going to replace it with these two numbers that are equivalent of 15 minus 4 is 11x. And so I'm going to have 3x squared plus 15x minus 4x and minus 20. So this 11x got split into these two terms here. And now you just do the grouping like we did in, oh, I had one up here, like number 18 or number 29. And you can do the grouping method. So what the first two terms have in common is a 3 and an x. If you take that out, you're left with x plus 5. The next two terms, what they have in common is a negative 4. If you divide both of those by negative 4, you get x plus 5. And my factors would be an x plus 5 and a 3x minus 4. For number 16, I don't think I saw this before, but you can actually divide all of your terms by 7. So I'm going to start with dividing by that 7. This will actually make this really nice. I'll have a 1x squared. Oh, I like these. These are my favorite. Tell me two numbers that multiply to make positive 3 and add to make negative 4. Just don't forget to keep that GCF of the 7 in your answer. What multiplies to be positive 3 and adds to make negative 4? I'm going to have a negative 3 and a negative 1. Negative 1. All right. We're getting there, almost done. This question here at the end, number 17 at the top on the right, 16y squared plus 24 plus 9. Now, there's one that we learned in your factoring flowchart that was called perfect square trinomial, and I'm going to investigate this because I noted with these two, these are kind of similar, that your first and last terms are perfect squares. And as I'm looking at this problem, I'm kind of curious because 16y squared is a perfect square and 9 is a perfect square. This could be, I'm not saying it is, but it could be a 4y times a 4y. And this could be, I'm not saying that it is, but it could be a 3 and a 3. Now some of you have been still confused on why you get 24. I'll show you, watch. This is how you check that the 24 will come out. When you FOIL your answer, which I'll show you after I get it, but when you see your middle term, this is how you check to see if it is the perfect square trinomial. You take the number 2 times one of these roots and one of these, which would be 4y and 3. Do I get, when I multiply these three together, 24y? If you do, it is a perfect square trinomial. And what that means is your factors are going to be identical, and the sign is going to look identical to the sign that you have in the middle. So notice how here my sign is plus, my middle sign was a plus. Here, a minus based on that middle term had a minus. So my middle term has a plus, so my factors are going to be just what I thought, a 4y and a 3. And since I have a plus in the middle, I'm going to use a plus here. A perfect square trinomial has a perfect little square. Now, if you were to draw this out and make your box, and what I mean by that, I'll show you only on this one here. If you take 4y plus 3 and a 4y plus 3, you'll see that you do get 16y squared plus 24y plus 9. 4 times 4 is 16, y times y is y squared. 4y times 3 is 12y. This 4y times this 3 is 12y. 3 times 3 is 9. The diagonals can be combined together to make that 24 that you had. So this is correct. All right, I'm going to jump down to number 23 next. None of my terms that I have left, the 7 and the 15, are divisible by that 2, so that's going to get stuck. So I'm going to follow the same pattern that I did here for number 15. So I'm going to take my 2 times my negative 15, and I'm going to get negative 30. My middle number is going to go at the bottom of my box, and now I'm going to come up with two numbers to replace my 7x with, my negative 7x, that multiply to make negative 30 and add to make negative 7. It's going to be negative 10 and a positive 3. So instead of negative 7, I'm going to replace it with negative 10 and positive 3x for the middle. So 2x squared. And the order of which you put these won't matter. You will still get the same answer with grouping. So now that I have 4 terms, I'm going to turn it into a grouping problem. If I have 2x squared minus 10x, my GCF here is going to be 2x. I'll be left with an x minus 5. My GCF here is going to be a positive 3, which means I'm left with an x minus 5. When these match, grouping works. So I'm left with an x minus 5 and a 2x plus 3. That's your answer. I'm going to jump down to number 25. For this problem, I do notice that you have a GCF, and as I'm looking at the 6x squared, the 3x, and the 30, I noticed all of them are divisible by 3, so I'm going to factor that out first. 6x squared divided by 3 will be 2x squared. 3x divided by 3 is negative x. Negative 30 divided by 3 is negative 10. Now with this problem, I'm going to do my big X method like I did over here, but I'm going to ignore that 3 out front for a second. 2 times negative 10 is negative 20. My middle term is negative 1. Tell me two numbers that multiply to make negative 20 and add to make negative 1. That's going to be negative 5 and a positive 4. So I'm going to split my middle here. So instead of one term, I'm going to use these two that are equivalent. So 2x squared minus a 5x plus 4x, that together does make my x, and minus 10, and now I'll do grouping. GCF here is going to be x. The GCF here is going to be a 2. And my factor pairs will be a 2x minus 5 and an x plus 2. Just don't forget to carry that GCF and keep that as part of your answer here. I think that's probably the most common mistake, is to forget that GCF. All right, I have 2 left. We're almost done. 8x squared, 2x, and negative 3. I cannot factor any GCF out, so I'm going to start with my big X. 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. My middle number is negative 2. What two numbers multiply to make negative 24 and add to make negative 2? This is going to be negative 6 and positive 4. So I'm going to split my middle into these two terms. 8x squared minus 6x plus 4x, so these are equivalent, and then I'm going to do grouping. These two terms have in common a 2 and an x. These two terms have nothing in common, so I'm going to just divide by 1. My factors that I see here, the 4x minus 3 match, so that means that's one of my answers, and what's left is my 2x plus 1. All right, we have one more problem on the page. Way to go. Good job keeping it up. We have one more left. It's number 21. Now, when you see a bunch of letters like this one, the only thing I'm going to have you do would be grouping. So what number is 16, 40, and 8 divisible by? The number is 8. Then look at your letters. What's the smallest power on the A? A to the first. And the smallest power on the B, that's going to be your GCF that you'll pull out. Now just divide out 8, A, and B, 3, and then you're going to have what's left, and that's it. You're done. 16 divided by 8 is 2. A squared take away 1 is 1a. B to the 5th take away 3 is b squared. I'm going to have a minus sign next. 40 divided by 8 is 5. A to the 4th take away 1 means I have a cubed. B cubed, take all the b's away. No b's are left here. 8 divided by 8 is 1. You don't need to write the 1, but you can if you want to. A divided by the A, no a's are left. B to the 7th, take away 3 b's, you're left with B to the 4th. Again, 1 B to the 4th or just B to the 4th is fine. Woohoo! Way to go. You should be ready for your test.